We bring in Scott Wright from the Oklahoman. Scott, how are you this morning?
Hey, Robert, doing good, man.
Yeah, I remember talking to Jim Knowles on that assistant coach's media day out at Karsten Creek, and you could tell. I mean, when you change the subject to linebackers, he kind of did that big breath and
Hmm.
kind of that little bit of a nervousness in his voice. And I don't know whether I guess that's when you talked to him about it as well.
Yeah, it was, and you could definitely tell that he seemed more concerned about that than the defensive line, which caught me off guard a little bit.
Yeah, and here's the thing that let's just get into it because I kind of mentioned it, and I mentioned it to him that day. And you know, in the Big 12, where offensive coordinators aren't afraid to do different things, I think the Big 12 has always been on the cutting edge of RPOs. I think the Big 12 has always been on the cutting edge of uh, the passing plethora of passing in college football, and the fact that hey, put them all the way. Baylor was the one that used to line their wideouts all the way on the boundary. Said, hey, we're not just gonna spread the field. We're gonna make you literally cover sideline to sideline, and not everybody does it like Art Briles did there at Baylor during those years, but everybody puts their guys wide, and they'll line up with slots, and you've got the hybrid positions where you don't have to sub the cowboy back, and different teams call it different things. But um, when you look at it, if offensive coordinators are willing to do different things and experiment, why can't you defensively? And I brought that up with Jim Knowles. Said you got safeties, you know, yeah, and not a bad thing to get another guy out there that can tackle and cover. So maybe instead of a linebacker, sometimes you use a safety and maybe almost go with a 3-2, 3-2-6. And he kind of looked at me and like, you're stealing my material here. But the safety position, that's where I want to get you to comment. There's a guy that was on the front page of the Oklahoman in high school as the player of the year that didn't touch the field last year. And I would think Jason, with guys like Jason Taylor and that there's an opportunity to get a lot of guys out there from the safety position that can make plays for you.
Yeah, there really is. Jason Taylor being one of them. A lot of guys have been raving about the way that Trey Sterling has come along as a backup in that spot. So there's so many guys, and you've got some physical guys like Malcolm Rodriguez and Colby Peel, who are really almost just undersized linebackers anyway, and so you can really see the potential to do some things to get those guys involved and really make an impact. Like you said, guys who can cover in space and still come up and make tackles are really valuable in this league, and the more of those guys you can get on the field, the better. To an extent.
We haven't mentioned the three starters who I think coming
Right.
back, even though it's kind of a young group. You look at Malcolm Rodriguez and what he's meant to the team. I'm a huge Kobe Harvell Peel guy, just because I thought he got better every game he played last year, and then ends up making the play that seals the bowl win. And then of course Jared Bernard was a guy early on that was identified last year. Now a couple of other guys I'd throw in the mix. Sean Michael Flanagan was a guy that came out of Arkansas as like the Class 3A Player of the Year with a lot of, he had a lot of recruiting pop, if not stars. I don't even remember what his stars were. And they beat Arkansas to get him. And then Tanner McAllister played enough to be a sophomore this year. He's moved to safety as kind of, a cover specialist there. And then Kanian Williams, who I mispronounced his name all last year. I said Canian. Now I find out it's Kanian. That's okay. I can
Sorry, I
work
was
with it.
calling him Canyon, so it's totally
Canyon,
acceptable.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Finally, I mean, it was Dan Hammersmith said, "Yeah, Kanian Williams," and I said, "Is that the way it's pronounced?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's what he said." And I'm like, Okay, I'll make that note down. But we just named off. We named off about everybody, but maybe a few walk-ons in the safety group, and then Chris McCoon, who is one of those big 6'2", 200-pound guys. That if the light clicks on with him, so yeah, safety is a strength, and maybe you can make something out of that in the light of linebacker depth issues.
Yeah, it really seems like they brought in so many guys in that recruiting class ahead of Noel joining coming in as defensive coordinator. That I was kind of curious what that group was going to do, being that they were a lot of them were recruited to a different scheme, but they've adapted really well, and you've got so many guys that can make impact on this team in a variety of ways, especially now that so many of those guys are not redshirting that had come in. You know, we're going to see them, on special teams a lot more. I would suspect, and getting involved in a lot of different ways.
We've been talking defense with Scott Wright from the Oklahoman, the beat writer for the Cowboys, and that's kind of bearing the lead because the lead is on the other side of the ball. Oklahoma State will scrimmage on Sunday. Um just got the word that is going to be a really tightened down practice in that I think it's only going to be necessary personnel and locked doors and all that, which doesn't surprise me because in a quarterback decision year, when either you're starting a new quarterback or you don't have an announced quarterback, that tends to be when Mike Gundy is most careful with with the security around practice. Um, just your thoughts. I mean, I know this. I've had a chance to see some of it, but with a radio show, I don't get to see as much of the team periods as I would like. But everything I've seen, every indication I get, is nobody over there is not telling the truth. That whether it's players, coaches, whoever commenting, everybody is sticking with, yeah, it's really close right now. And honestly, that's what I've seen. There's not a you know like Gundy said last week at media day. If you'd seen practice today, you'd say play two.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen more of it. Actually, put your eyeballs on more of it than I have, because I'm part of the group that gets kicked out after 20 minutes on availability days. I've talked to a ton of people about it, and I'm right with you. I don't think there's no way that this many people could be BSing us this well. It's just not possible. So I think that this thing really is as tight as people are telling us. And you start looking down the line, and you mentioned the scrimmage coming up, and then you got to start thinking about preparing for game week before too long. And when is the tipping point going to come? Is it going to come? Are both guys going to play at Oregon State? If they do, and things are still similar, what are you going to gain from playing two guys against McNeese State that you can't learn against your own defense? I don't know. And then all of a sudden you're to the Tulsa game, and Texas is another week away, and you really need to start figuring things out at that point. So I'm going to be really curious to see what we hear about this scrimmage, and at what point someone starts to take some steps forward in this race, and build a gap between them and the other guy, because it's going to come a point where splitting the reps 50-50 is not going to necessarily be beneficial for the team. So they've got to start figuring some stuff out, not immediately, but before too long, and be ready to go one direction or another.
It's kind of funny. I kid Scott a lot and say, "Hey, yeah, your guy is making a real run at this." And I called Drew Brown his guy because Scott broke the story last winter in I think it was in February that that the Cowboys had picked up. Not this last February; it was February before last. That's how
Right,
long Drew
right.
Brown's been around. But that Mike Yurcich had picked up a transfer quarterback from Hawaii. And when I kid Scott, I mean, I don't think Drew Brown's really his guy. I mean, no, hey, whoever plays is whoever plays. But I do think I'll give Scott credit. You kind of thought all along, hey, this guy's got possibilities, and I remember a couple of conversations where I kind of looked at Scott. The guy's an insurance policy, and now I'm eating crow here because and you know how he's done it, Scott. He's done it. I know you probably talked to him media day. He's done it the hard way. He's rolled up his sleeves. He's done every extra credit project. If this was school science biology class, he dissected 20 frogs while the rest of the class dissected 2. I mean, this guy has not been afraid to do extra, to spend extra time with teammates. And I know a lot of people will say, well, that's, then okay, he can't play. He's just a good politician. No, the guy can play too. So I give him a lot of credit because he was the underdog and he's put himself in a at least what I think now is a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly looks that way. And like I said, if he couldn't play, guys would still love him. But they love a lot of guys who.
But he
can't
wouldn't
play
be in a quarterback battle.
Exactly. They know that they can, whether they can play or not too. So he's got guys on his side because he's working hard and he's making plays.
Sure.
And so we'll see. We'll see how well that all pays off for him. Like you said, he there were a lot of times when he could have given up or coasted or gone to B2 and played out the string or whatever, and he hasn't. And so we'll see just what we'll see just how strong that all of that thing, all those things that he did, how fortified that has made his case in this battle. Because as you talk to everybody, you definitely get the sense that they can see the athletic ability and the arm that Spencer Sanders has, and that it's different than what Drew Brown is bringing to the field. But Drew is doing things to keep himself in this race.
Well, and I was behind Jenny Carlson the other day at media day, and one of the questions I had for Drew, because I had heard him talking about it, I think in the video the athletic department released, how important his 1 year at College of San Mateo is, and I've got a soft spot for junior college guys, naturally, because I got a kid that coaches at that level. But he flat out says that's the first time he had coaches he felt believed in him. Have you talked to the San Mateo people?
That's one place I didn't. I haven't ever reached out. Was to San Mateo. Talked to a lot of people in Hawaii about him, but I've heard him discuss that before, and it was interesting to hear that from him, just because it was you don't think about that, particularly at the quarterback position, and this is a guy that had been a successful player. But you don't hear guys talk about their coaches that way, particularly at a junior college. But actually, probably more so at a junior college than other places, because they end up at a junior college. There's probably because somebody doubted them along the way, or several somebodies. But it was really fascinating to hear him. And that's one of the things you get with a guy that's been around like he has as a fifth-year senior and has a little bit of perspective in his life now, and can see some things differently maybe than younger kids can. But he definitely seems to have a certain maturity and comfort about himself and kind of who he is and what he can do.
Yeah, your impression of Spencer Sanders, talking to him media day. I mean, I thought he said the right things too.
Yeah. I thought he said the right things. He was more relaxed than I even kind of expected. Not that I expected him to be uncomfortable or tense, but you hear about how competitive he is and all of those sorts of things. And he was joking and smiling and having a good time. When I didn't know enough about his personality to say one way or another whether he was going to be like that, but he was, and I was impressed by that because that's the first time in that type of a setting for him. Although I'm sure some high school games had some pretty big media coverage for him back in the day. So, but first time at Oklahoma State that all of us were getting to talk to him in that way. So, to see him really show his personality some was, I thought, good. And you can tell that he's a confident kid, and you need that if you're gonna be a freshman trying to fight your way into the lineup and go win this battle. So that's the important thing for him. But I enjoyed talking to both of them. That was what was the best thing of the whole day, was that you didn't come away and think, well, this guy's just boring. I don't know how this guy is drumming up any charisma around the team, because he's horrible to try to talk to.
Last thing with Scott Wright, I think we would all agree. I mean, if we talk to the folks that do the same things we do at OU, at Texas, I don't know about the new coaches. I know at K-State, anything was going to feel like the Berlin Wall had tumbled down, considering, the radio silence that was constant during the Bill Snyder era. But I think we would all agree across the Big 12, coaches keep about the same arm's length from the media during this time of year. But I don't know if you've looked at it. If you cover Oregon State, the other orange and black OSU, the team OSU Oklahoma State will open with on August 30th, you can go tape practices. You can get your phone out, videotape practices. You get an injury report every day. You can do your own depth chart every day and publish it. It is off the charts information coming out of Corvallis and the Beavers. Have you noticed?
I have just doing some very light research on trying to figure out what was going on up there. I started seeing all this stuff, and I'm like, this is different. And again, like I said, it's not just Gundy. It's this part of the country is that way. But yeah, to see the information that's coming out up there has been unique to see, because I kind of thought all of college football was sort of doing the same thing that the Big 12 was, and because I know when Herm Edwards landed at Arizona State, they were all talking about all the changes he was making that was making it more like a pro team in the way that he did some of those type of things, and so I assume that was still unique in a lot of places. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see the way that team is covered, and like you said, videos and depth charts and all the things that can come out up there. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's wild. Hey, Scott, I appreciate it, and again, thanks for coming on. And I guess we'll see you next Tuesday, next availability. Everybody,
right.
Be on hand Tuesday after practice.
That's right. We'll be there.
All right, Scott Wright from the Oklahoman covers the Oklahoma State beat.